Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, in this video, we're going to learn how to calculate and pay zakat, also known as the alms tax in Islam. Before we do that, we're going to discuss what exactly zakat is, who is eligible to receive zakat, who is not eligible to receive zakat, and any other important information regarding zakat. So let's get started with what exactly zakat is. Zakat is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and it's an essential form of charity and social welfare. The Arabic word zakat means purification, and it also means growth, signifying that by giving a portion of one's wealth, a person purifies their wealth, and they also help grow it spiritually and socially. So what is zakat? Zakat is an obligatory annual payment, and is made under Islamic law on certain types of property and wealth. So it's used for charitable and religious purposes. And we'll look at some of those later on in the video. It ensures that there is economic balance within society. You essentially will take money from those who are well off and distribute it amongst the poor. So as mentioned earlier, zakat is mandatory. So if you are Muslim and you meet the necessary criteria of wealth, you must pay zakat. It's often considered a form of tax, similar to income or sales tax that you would pay. It ensures that those who are less fortunate in society are taken care of. The obligation to pay zakat is established in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 110, and establish prayer and give zakat, and whatever good you put forward for yourselves, you will find it with Allah. So let's move on to how much is zakat. So zakat is 2.5% or 1/40th of a Muslim's total savings and wealth. If a Muslim has more than the bare minimum threshold in savings and wealth, known as the Nisab, then they must pay zakat, and this zakat is 2.5% of their total savings and wealth. So let's take a look at what Nisab is. The Nisab threshold is the minimum amount of wealth a Muslim must have before they are obligated to pay zakat, and it's calculated based on the value of silver or gold. So what that means is basically you would get the current price of gold or silver, 3 ounces of gold or 21 ounces of silver in your local currency. And then if your total savings and wealth exceeds that amount, you must pay zakat. So as of the making of this video, I am in Canada, and 21 ounces of silver is roughly $970. So 970 Canadian dollars. And 3 ounces of gold is roughly, we'll say 12,500 Canadian dollars. So if my wealth exceeds the Nisab amount of silver or gold, then I am obligated to pay zakat. Most scholars recommend using silver as the Nisab amount because it's a lower value. So if you use silver, then more people are qualified to pay zakat, which means that there will be more money that can be distributed amongst the poor. If you use gold, it's very unlikely that many people fall into this category of wealth. And so there will be less people paying zakat, which means less money is distributed amongst the poor. So scholars recommend using silver. So let's move on to the next section. Who is eligible to receive zakat? So according to Islamic teachings, zakat must be distributed among 8 categories of people. And these 8 categories are mentioned in the Quran in Surah Tawbah, verse 60. So let's go through each one of the categories. So the first one is the poor, or al-fukara. So these are people who have little to no income, and they struggle to afford basic necessities. So for example, someone who is unemployed, with no means of financial support, they would fall into this category. So the next category, the needy, very similar to the last one, al-masakin. These are people who may have some income, but again, it's not enough to cover basic needs. So for example, someone that has a low paying job who cannot afford rent, medical expenses, or proper food for their family, they would qualify for zakat under this category. So even if you have an income but it's low and you can't cover basic needs, you fall into this category. So the next category are zakat collectors. So these are individuals officially appointed to collect and distribute zakat. So for example, an organization that collects and distributes zakat, uh, the people working for that organization, they may receive compensation from zakat if no other funds are available to support their work. This is because zakat collectors ensure that zakat is properly handled and distributed. And so as a result, they're entitled to a small portion of the zakat that they receive for as service or payment for their service. So the next category are those whose hearts are to be reconciled. So these are new Muslims who may need financial support. So for example, if there is someone that is recently converted or reverted to Islam and they need financial support, they fall under this category. Or someone who may have recently converted to Islam and they have been disowned by their family, so they lost financial support, they can receive zakat to help them get back on their feet. So the next category of people are the slaves, or the riqab. Historically, this category was zakat that was used to free slaves by purchasing their freedom, but in today's time, this would not necessarily apply. So in today's time, some scholars say that it can still be applied to efforts aimed at liberating individuals from modern forms of exploitation. So, for example, if you help a victim of human trafficking rebuild their lives, you can do so through zakat money. So you can pay zakat to help them rebuild their lives, or any other form of exploitation. So the next category are debtors. Basically, people burdened by legitimate debts. So this has to be a legitimate debt, not someone that is in debt because of gambling or any other haram activity. Someone that is legitimately in debt and they cannot repay their debts, or they're struggling to repay their debts, they fall into this category. For example, someone who may have taken a loan for medical treatment, or to support their family, or for basic needs, they are eligible to receive zakat to help pay off their debts. The next category is in the cause of Allah, so fi sabilillah. And this is a very broad category. It includes charitable efforts, it could include religious efforts, you know, or even efforts of da'wah. So, for example, if you use zakat to fund Islamic schools, or for humanitarian relief, or for legitimate dawah work, then that falls into this category, and those type of people running these organizations or these causes are eligible to receive zakat. So the next category and the final category are stranded travelers, so Ibn Sabil. So this refers to people who are away from home and they have run out of money. So now they are stranded, they don't have any way to get back home, they need financial resources, or they need money to return home, so they are eligible to receive zakat to help them return home safely. So now let's look at who cannot receive zakat. So zakat cannot be given to immediate family. So that means your parents, grandparents, children, and spouses. So these people, even if they fall under the 8 categories we mentioned earlier, they are not eligible to receive zakat from you. The reason for this is because it is already an obligation upon you to help these people financially and in any other form. They are your dependents, and it is your obligation to help them financially and in any other form that they might require. However, your other relatives, such as siblings, aunts and uncles, your cousins, etc., they are still eligible to receive zakat if they fall into the 8 categories mentioned earlier. So the next question, when and how to pay zakat. So a Muslim must pay zakat once a year. So choosing a fixed date annually, most people prefer to pay it in Ramadan. So if a person's wealth continuously exceeds the Nisab, they select one date every year and then they assess and pay their zakat on that day. So if you choose Ramadan, every Ramadan you must pay zakat as long as you meet the basic requirements of Nisab. So let's discuss now how to calculate zakat. So zakat is paid on net assets. What this means is all qualifying assets that you may have, which we will discuss shortly, minus short-term liabilities. We just call this STL. That equals your Zakatable wealth. So let's talk about the assets that are subject to zakat. So starting off with the first one, cash. So all money you currently possess, whether it's in hand, in the bank, digital money, any sort of cash or money that you have saved up, this falls into the category of assets and you must pay zakat on it. So next we have gold and silver. So zakat is due on any gold and silver you own. So it could be in the form of jewelry, bars, or just pure form, coins as well. So whatever gold and jewelry that you possess, you need to determine its current market value, as we did earlier. And then you must pay zakat on that. So 2.5% of its current market value, you would pay zakat on that. So the next asset you must pay zakat on are your shares and investments. So if you own stocks or any other investment, this could be anything that you have or own as an investment, you must pay zakat on its current market value. Current market value as of the time that you are paying zakat. So next is money owed to you. So if you have lent someone money and there is a strong likelihood that they will repay you, you should include it in your zakat calculation. So money that you are certain will be repaid. You must include this in your zakat calculations. However, if the debt is doubtful or unlikely to be repaid, you do not need to count it. So if the debtor repays in the future, you can then pay zakat on it at that time. But if at the current moment it's doubtful that they will pay you back, you don't include that money in your assets. So next is business stock. So this is if you own a business, you must pay zakat on the market value of your inventory, which are goods meant for sale. So this means that all unsold items in your store, warehouse, or stock should be valued at their current selling price. So you have to value them at their current selling price, not at the price you bought them. And then you pay zakat on this. Again, 2.5%. However, assets used in running the business, like machinery or office furniture or any other related things, are not subject to zakat. And we'll talk more about this later in the video. The final category is rental income saved. If you own rental properties, zakat is not due on the property itself, unless it is purchased for resale. But if there is any rental income, you must pay zakat on this income. So this is rental income that has accumulated as savings. If it remains in your possession at the time of your zakat calculation, you must include it. So next, let's talk about the liabilities. So stuff that you can exclude from your zakat calculations. So the first one is debts. So any personal loans you have taken that you are obligated to repay. So when you calculate zakat, you can deduct the portion of the debt that is due within the next year. So basically a short-term loan or debt. However, long-term debt such as mortgages are generally not deducted in full. So if you have a mortgage, for example, you would deduct the year's worth of mortgage, but not the entire mortgage. So you can deduct the year's worth of mortgage from your zakat calculation, as it basically is a short-term loan or a debt. So the next category is rent mortgage due, very similar to this previous category. So only rent or mortgage that is currently due, so due within the next month. This can be deducted from zakat, from when you're calculating zakat, but a full outstanding mortgage amount is not deducted. So this is just short-term rent or mortgage that is due. The next category is bills due. Again, necessary payments such as utility bills. So if you have electricity, water, gas, whatever utility bills, you can deduct this from when you're calculating zakat. Phone bills, any other outstanding payments for services already used. So these bills can be deducted when you're calculating zakat, and only bills that are currently due or overdue can be deducted, not future expenses. So you can't just deduct the entire year's worth of bills from zakat, only ones that are currently due or overdue. And then the next category is business expenses. So if you own a business, you can deduct necessary operational costs. So anything that is currently due, you can deduct when calculating zakat. So for example, salaries that you need to pay, rent for your business premises, any other operating expense that is currently due. All of these can be deducted when calculating zakat. And again, not any future expenses, just what is due or will be due shortly, not future expenses. And the final category, the final liability that you can deduct when calculating zakat is a short-term business loan or an overdraft. So any short-term business loans or overdraft amounts that must be repaid soon. So typically, anything that must be repaid within a year. So short-term business loans and overdraft amounts can be deducted from your zakat, but again, long-term business loans are treated like personal debt, and only the portion due within the next year can be deducted. So not anything more than a year, just short-term loans. So zakat calculation formula is basically total assets minus your short-term liabilities, and you get the zakatable wealth. And if this amount exceeds Nisab, then you must pay zakat on 2.5% of it. So let's take a look at some example calculations. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. A person has $14,000 in assets and $11,000 in liabilities. So let's pull up the Zakat calculation formula. So total assets minus short-term liabilities equals Zakatable wealth. So we have $14,000 in assets minus $11,000 in short-term liabilities. This gives us $3,000. So as we mentioned earlier, if this exceeds the Nisab amount of gold or silver, this person must pay Zakat. We're going to use silver because that's what most scholars recommend. As we calculated earlier, it's around 970 Canadian dollars. Because 3,000 is larger, this person must pay Zakat. So let's calculate how much Zakat he pays. He will pay 3,000 times 0.025, which is basically 2.5%. This comes to around $75. So this person must pay $75 in Zakat. So let's look at the next example. On May 4th, 2024, a person exceeds the value of Nisab. On May 1st, 2025, they have $23,000 saved up. However, their monthly rent bill is due, so a liability. And they owe a friend $6,000, another liability. This person also owns a small clothing store, which has $9,000 worth of merchandise. Again, that's an asset. So do they pay Zakat? And if so, how much do they pay? So again, let's bring up the Zakat calculation formula. So total assets minus short-term liabilities equals Zakatable wealth. This person's assets were $23,000 in savings plus $9,000 worth of store merchandise. And their liabilities were 3,500 rent due plus $6,000 that they loaned to a friend. Sorry, that they owe to a friend. So now let's do the net calculation. So we have $33,000 in assets minus 9,500 in liabilities, which gives us a total amount of $22,500. And again, this value exceeds Nisab. In this case, even if we take the Nisab value of gold, it would exceed it as well. And so this person must pay Zakat. So let's calculate how much Zakat he must pay. So he will pay 22,500 times 0.025, basically 2.5%. And his total Zakatable wealth, his total amount of Zakat to be paid comes out to $562.50. That is how much Zakat he must pay. Okay, so for this last example, I'll go through the assets and the liabilities, and then you can do it yourself. The answer will be posted in this video's comment down below. So on April 14, 2024, a person exceeds the value of Nisab. On April 11, 2025, he has $13,000 saved up. So that's an asset. However, his monthly rent bill is due soon, $1,500, a liability. He also owns a small fast food restaurant and needs to pay his employees approximately $4,000. So salaries given to employees is a business expense, and it's a liability. and an additional $3,500 for the shop's rent, another liability. On top of that, he owes his credit card company $11,000. So it's a loan, a liability. Since he owns a fast food restaurant, he will pay zakat on his inventory, whether it be in the form of raw material that still needs to be made into food or already prepared food. When he does the calculation, his inventory value comes out to be $1,000. So that's an asset. One of his friends who borrowed $7,000 from him says he will be able to pay him back within the next 2 weeks. So a loan that you are certain or you know will be paid back soon, that is an asset. So in total, he has 13, 1, and 7 in assets, 1,500, 4,000, 3,500, and 11,000 in liabilities. So does he pay zakat? And if so, how much does he pay? And I want you to solve this using the Nisab value of silver. So again, I think it was 970 Canadian dollars. So if his assets minus liabilities is greater than this, then he must pay zakat. If not, he doesn't pay. And if he does pay zakat, how much does he pay? So to summarize, zakat purifies wealth and it strengthens social welfare in Islamic society. By giving zakat, we ensure economic balance and help those in need. Inshallah, in future videos, we'll discuss more about the history of zakat, more detail as to why it's paid, how it came about, and any other information regarding it. For this video, that's all. May Allah accept our zakat. May He increase us in wealth and blessings. And may He accept the work of Deen from all of us. Ameen.